Welcome, everyone, to Rock M Radio. This is a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. It's season 8 already, and we're here to talk about your Missouri Basketball Tigers as the only podcast strictly talking about Mizzou Basketball. I'm your host, Sam Snelling. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me on your left. Please take a moment to hit the like button below, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so we can help grow this channel a little bit. With me on the right side, again, if you're watching on YouTube, is Matthew J. Harris. Matt, how are you?
I'm fine, Sam. We have 3 weeks until actual basketball games. So I'm thrilled that soon we won't have to pass our time looking at Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets, video clips, and all manner of preseason prep. We'll actually have real, honest-to-God results to talk about. So we're close. And, man, I really like that to get there. I think I'm going cross-eyed at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. The lead up, well, especially for anyone who's been reading the, I hope everybody that listens to this, reads the player previews that you and Matt Watkins have been putting together, as well as the SEC team previews that I've been working on. You've been helping. Watkins also provided data for those, so there's, this is like a team effort all the way around. I hope everybody is reading all of these because there's been a lot of background work. I'm hoping, Matt, as we continue to kind of build this up, that work becomes a little less in future years.
Yeah, hopefully.
But it was a lot of work this year, but I think we built like a really kind of a cool system that is going to give us a little bit more information on like kind of what we can expect from these teams. And so I think that's kind of where we're starting. A little bit here is most of the preseason projections have come out. You've been tracking a lot of the projections on the Rock and Plus forums. If you are subscribed, you should check out that thread. It's really interesting to kind of see where the Tigers are sort of expected to hit. And if you're not subscribed, please do, because it's a really interesting thread, a lot of information. We're going to talk a little about it here, if I can get that out. But we've now got all 4 of the major metrics have been published, which would be Ken Pom. If you didn't check out the podcast a couple weeks ago with me and Ken Pomeroy, go back and do that. Ken was fantastic. Evan Mia, we had Evan on last year. Evan was great. Bart Torvik and Eric Haslam. I did actually reach out to Bart. He doesn't seem all that interested in doing podcasts, which is totally fine. I know he does it as a side gig. We still love his data. Those are out. CBS projections are out. Those are always interesting to look at because CBS does, Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander are 2 of the probably more prominent, commentators, reporters on college basketball in general. In the sphere there, we've also got SEC Media came out this week, which is always an interesting poll. Matt's got the data on everything and that and what that means exactly. But we're going to start with the SEC Media poll. And I'm just going to pull this. I've got it on Twitter, so people that are watching can look along as we kind of talk about this. Yeah. And I pulled this directly off of look, we've got some Arrowhead Pride live show. Hey, Blake Level's live.
Hey. Hi,
but so here we go. The SEC released their predicted order finish. This is the media poll. You'll see our Fair Tigers down there at number 13. Not a lot of surprise at the top.
No.
Pretty much everybody except for, I think, Ken Pom. Yeah, Ken Pom has Alabama 3rd.
Yeah.
But pretty much every other group of picks that I've seen has Alabama at number 1.
Yeah. Alabama's number 1 with a bullet. I think I've tracked 17 outlets. They are first in 12 of them. Auburn is second in 10 of those 17, and Tennessee is 11th, is third in 11 of them. So a pretty locked in top 3. The only other team that's as locked in as poor Vandy down in 16th. They're picked last in 11 of 17 outlets and analytics
it's
sites.
interesting because Vandy is a team that I don't want to say like we're high on, but there's definitely an overlooked factor happening there. Brand new roster, really tough to account for how that can go. Evan Mia's rankings like Vandy quite a bit, but Ken Pom, Haslam did not. The SEC media voters did not. The masses voters, which is another sort of thing that for the previews we get a bunch of people to rank them, and the masses had Vandy at 14, so not at the bottom. But I do think that there is sort of a consensus on who is at the top and a consensus on who is probably going to be at the bottom.
Yep.
And I really do think the cutoff is 14, 15, 16, and 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Realistically, when you look at the preseason picks, the way I sort of look at the preseason polls is how are things breaking into tiers. So you'll see Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee are almost universally locked in as your top 3. After that, which, on the screen, you'll probably see A&M, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas are sort of in that next tranche, or they have been. And then, and 7, and 8, 9, and 10 have been Florida, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. And that generally, that group of 10 has also been the one that we've seen a lot in terms of preseason bracketology. There's a pretty clear consensus around, Ole Miss and Mississippi State kind of being the cutoff for teams that will have NCAA tournament aspirations. That would mean that Missouri, Georgia, and South Carolina are kind of in that back into the bubble tier, or the teams are going to hope to claw their way onto the bubble. So and then you get into if you want to throw OU in there, I guess that's fine. But LSU and Vandy have been, kind of locked in at 15 and 16. But Missouri is.
I was going to say that the analytics do seem to like Oklahoma a little more than a lot of the people like Oklahoma. And I do think like that's one thing that we're discovering is, they're, for the most part, I think that, probably because Alabama's been good for several years in a row now. Auburn's good pretty much every year. Tennessee's been good pretty much every year. After that, you get Texas A&M, who had one really great year, 2 average years. People are kind of cutting the difference. I think Arkansas and Kentucky are kind of in a similar spot where they're restarting, but expectations are high. Texas is kind of in that same group of like expectations are high, but we're not really sure what they're going to do. And then you sort of have like the rest of the, that bottom of the middle, and the analytics, like Oklahoma's 40, which puts them kind of like square in the middle in Ken Pom. But even so, one of the things that I did is I actually tried to average the 4 metrics, but then I added weight based on sort of who has a little bit more respect as far as their accuracy. So we're kind of giving a little bit more heft to Ken Pom in the weight, and trying to kind of balance that out a little bit. And Oklahoma still, their lowest ranking in the metrics is 54 on Torvik. Yeah. That landed them in my average at like 44. Which was 11th. So like that's a lot different than 15th.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is like you start off saying there weren't a lot of surprises here. If you would look at the media poll on the screen and then you looked at like the average predicted finish for every team. So like the consensus of all these 17 outlets, you can get an average off of that. Every team's spot in the media poll was within plus or minus 2 spots of their consensus average. Like there was almost no shock here. Like the SEC media is higher on Arkansas and Carolina. They're lower on Kentucky and Oklahoma. Everyone else is usually within one spot of where their average overall is. So there was not a lot of surprises there, but you do bring up the interesting point, which is the divergence between what human voters have been doing and what the analytic models are doing. Like Missouri is a prime example. If you were to average their average finish in, I even include Massey, but across 5 analytic sites is 15th. Their average, finish ranking in human polls is 11th. For Arkansas, their average finish in analytics is 9th. It's 5th in human polls. So there's a little bit more divergence there, in terms of, humans looking at Missouri and Arkansas and saying, okay, we like these rosters. We like these teams a little bit more. But you were just talking about Oklahoma. Like there are 4 teams where voters and, humans have been more bearish on outlooks. Like Mississippi State is usually 7th in analytic models. It's 10th in human polls. LSU's 12th in analytics, 15th in human polls. Oklahoma, as you mentioned, is kind of 11th in the analytic models. They're 14th in the human polls. Texas is 4th in analytics and 8th in human polls. And so I think what we're seeing, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, is the influence of kind of that weighting and that baseline data that a lot of these groups use to sort of anchor, their preseason predictions. And, we talk about this a lot early on and why you kind of have to not put a lot of stock in KenPom or Torvik or any of these sites until mid-December, because what's happening is live data is filtering in and pushing out that weighting data. But right now, what we're seeing is kind of like these models are all largely relying on prior seasons weighting data. And if you're Oklahoma, who's been pretty good defensively and on the glass and been respectable offensively, and you're going to
and in a really good league.
And in a really good league, you're going to grade out well. If you're Mississippi State, which has been one of the best defensive teams in the country, the past couple of years, that's going to really help you. Same thing with Texas. You're a pretty good defense. You're pretty solid offense. You're coming out of the Big 12. That's going to help you in the preseason poll here. Whereas if you're Missouri and you've been getting absolutely smashed defensively for 3 years and on the glass for 3 years, it's not going to help your analytic profile. If you're Arkansas, which, has had a bumpy last 2 regular seasons, under Muss, it's going to act as a weight on your profile. And so this is where I think, Watkins and I have talked about, you don't discount, the analytic sites early on. Now, I think there's a lot of utility in terms of seeing, what they're putting out, but a lot of them are reliant, I think, on continuity, returning production. That's kind of the way that they're trying to, I think, counterweight a lot of stuff. And it's a little bit hard to look at them and go, okay, yeah, Missouri's the 15th best team in the SEC, because same thing with Arkansas. I don't know if Arkansas will be the 9th best team. And I say this because if you look at recruiting, Arkansas and Missouri have 2 of the top 12 overall recruiting classes in the country. They brought in some of the biggest hauls of talent nationally. Do we think that, a team like Missouri that had a top 5 high school class and like a top 10 portal class is going to finish next to last in the conference? I mean, it could. It's within, kind of the normal range here, but is that the baseline? Probably not. So I think you've got to really sit down and sort of ask yourself and, kind of think a little critically at times, okay, this data and these sites are helpful, but there's so much turnover and so much, loss of continuity that we've really got to, in some ways, really evaluate these rosters kind of separate of what maybe the analytic sites are telling us. And, we're as wonky as they come, and these sites are going to be really handy come mid-season when we have to compare resumes and we've got to evaluate what Missouri's doing. But right now, I think you almost have to put some caveats around them because of how they build the preseason ratings and how they sort of build in baseline data.
Well, and even, Ken Pomeroy was honest when we talked about it. I asked him, how you factor in transfers. And he said, in some ways, it has made him completely rethink how he does the algorithm. and it has to, because there is a historical baseline that you can use, but when there's this much turnover, like that has to play a significant role. I still think like you have to give credit to Ken, because his rankings tend to be far more accurate than not. And so that's what I've got pulled up here. I would like to point out the little number next to Southeastern Conference here at the top. It has a little 1 next to it, Matt.
Don't show that to Fran Fraschilla. He's going to go nuts if he sees that. How dare you question the Big 12 supremacy? How dare you?
The Big 12 has been the best conference going back for several years now. I feel like the SEC has kind of been trying to build towards this, and it looks like they finally captured it. A big thing for them is really the lack of, weight at the bottom of the league, which is something that has really plagued the league for multiple years. That includes Missouri last year, who was in the mid 100s, and I believe Vanderbilt was in the 200s. I don't know if they finished there or not. I can't remember off the top of my head, but but having that kind of weight in your conference is going to drag you down. The benefit that the Big 12 had is that they haven't had that weight. They've had, even at the bottom of the conference, you might have like Oklahoma State, but they're still going to be like 75th in KenPom, or maybe 90th, but they're not falling all the way back to like 175. And I think like that's one of the ways that you're able to avoid, carrying that weight, and then you end up getting better rankings. So KenPom ratings are here. We can kind of compare them to what we just saw. Vanderbilt is lowest rated, 96th. I think so. I was going to say, like, I was feeling a lot better about Vanderbilt until I heard that Johnny Wright.
Until
maybe the only guy who was going to be able to provide
the only true big option they get. That's a tough one.
Yeah, so they might have some issues defensively, but we can kind of see Missouri is in not a terrible spot here. And one of the things that we've talked about is them needing to improve defensively. So I'm just going to hit the Missouri page, and we're going to look at the Missouri page. So Missouri is 53 in the KenPom ratings, 75th in defense, which is actually would be kind of a record for Dennis. Let's see. 2 years ago they were 180. Last year they were 181. A big reason for that is if you look at the old defensive category, there's this offensive rebounding stat right here.
Good God.
They were the worst team in Division I 2 years ago, and they were 358th, which is like the 6th worst team last year in offensive rebounding.
But keeping teams off the offensive glass.
Yes, offensive rebounding percentage defense. That'd be your defensive rebound rate. I feel like the staff at the very least seemed like they were aware that was more of an issue than than maybe they thought it might be a couple years ago. And at least in like the roster construction, this does look like it should be a better defensive team. It does look like it should be a better rebounding team. And at least at the front, like it does look like, Ken Pomeroy is giving them credit, for that type of lineup change, and giving them a 75th ranking in defensive efficiency. It's not great. It's not bad. I think if we actually have to go back here.
It would be, if they're 75th in adjusted defensive efficiency, let's say they hit that benchmark, it would be, in 2021 when Zoe took them to the tournament, they were 57th. But it would only be the, I think, third or fourth time that they'd be inside the top 80 in the last decade. I mean, the defense is really the linchpin here. It's, the offense, the talent they brought in, I'm pretty confident that Dennis can build a competent offense here. The case really is, will they sit down and guard? Will they clear rebounds? And are they going to find a balance between wanting to, create havoc and get into transition and just doing the grunt work of forcing tough shots, getting bodies to the glass, and rebounding? If it, that was always the one thing that I think you could say about Zoe's teams were, they tended to force a lot of contested shots. And they tended to rebound pretty well. It was very boring. It was gap sound. It was switch sound. But they, when they had guys that got hurt too, like when they had key injuries, you know what they did? They got really conservative on defense. They played gap tight defense and they went to the glass. That's, it's very boring. It's very workmanlike, but you'd like to see a little bit of that from this team this year of just be solid. Just be a solid defensive team, force tough shots, clear misses, and then try and hit on the secondary break. But I'll let you continue. It seems pretty simple to me. They've got a guard and they've got a rebound.
No, and we were talking a little bit before, before we went on, and I wrote a piece. I want to say it was back in June, and I was talking about sort of like how this, not just last year's team, but how overall the program can kind of trim at the margins, and what they can do to sort of make their essentially like make your net ranking, make Ken Palm, Evan Mia, all these analytics sites, make them just like you more. And doing these little things can have a net effect of likely winning you at least a couple more games. And that is, like you were kind of saying, it's just, can we, instead of being a porous team on the glass, can we be an average team? And if you do that, what does that do for your ranking? Well, I mean, it takes you probably from 150 to 50 just by being not terrible.
Average.
Right. And last year, like Missouri struggled, to shoot the ball consistently from the outside. If you take, like one extra make, a game or something like that, like over the course, and next thing you know, like that percentage is going to, pull up, and then that's going to help your offensive efficiency. And these are all the little things that Missouri, can do to just be a more efficient basketball team. And if you're a more efficient basketball team, that usually pays dividends. And I think that's, that is one of the things that, Ken was, I think on a blog post was talking about Missouri sort of being this outlier for how they didn't win any games last year. And it's just unusual for a team to kind of go through the conference the way that they did and lose all those. And I think a lot of it just boiled down to, they had some bad injury luck, but I think a larger segment of that was the fact that they didn't really create a lot of opportunities for themselves, by creating sort of more efficiency on both ends of the ball.
I mean, I wrote about it this summer. Like Missouri had one of the best high majors in the country at forcing blocks and steals. Like it's stock percentage. Missouri was really good again at like creating havoc, but they fouled the crap out of people. So, what you want to do is you want to create turnovers and blocks without fouling a lot. I think if you look at the top 20 high major teams in the country at creating blocks and steals, Missouri's near the bottom in free throw rate. They just hack the crap out of people. They were 340th nationally in free throw rate on defense. So, okay, you're trying to create turnovers, but in the process, you're putting teams on the line for the most efficient shot in the game. Then, not only that, to create those turnovers, you're playing a system that is more switch heavy, that takes more teams out, that that extends your defense, that because of the switches creates problematic situations for box outs and rebounding. And then you've got personnel that aren't very good at rebounding at all. So you're trying to create turnovers, you're not creating them very efficiently, and you're doing it with guys who are getting into situations where it's disadvantageous to block out and they're already struggling. So then you're getting crushed on the glass. Like a lot of it, to be simple, is they didn't have the right people playing in the right sort of defensive setup and they were getting killed. So we could talk about scheme. I wrote about it last year. They did make adjustments, but at the end of the day, it was a personnel question. And what they did this offseason was they went and they got bigger, longer, more athletic guys. Most of those guys grade out better on the defensive glass. Most of them grade out better at forcing turnovers without fouling. Now, we've got to see what they can do, and this is where the rubber meets the road. You went and got better athletes. You went and got guys who supposedly are better at the two things you struggled with last year. If you are still bad defensively, if you are still getting beaten on the glass, it's probably not a personnel issue. It's probably a stylistic issue. And I think that's sort of the conversation we're going to have to potentially have this season if things don't get better defensively or on the glasses. You went and got guys that supposedly solved this problem, but it's persisting. It's probably a scheme and a style thing here. So I think that's to bring it back to our discussion about, how you project this team and sort of where you look at them. I can look at this roster and I can say, I like this roster. I think, there's offensively some potential to be really, really potent here. But Dennis Gates has 5 years of track record that says he's going to prioritize turnovers at the expense of rebounding. And he's got 2 years here where that scheme is not really translated. You can like this roster a lot and you can talk about making changes at the margin. They've got to go do it. And I think, if you're a media member voting in the poll, you can like this roster too, but there's some pretty big questions that need resolution here. And, that's why I don't really get up in arms if people are saying, they're picked a little low. What does this mean? I'm like, they got to go prove that they can guard people efficiently and that they can rebound cleanly. That's where we're at. They have to demonstrate that, that competence in order to earn sort of that trust and credibility back.
Yeah. And, I look at it as sort of similar of the point that I brought up in the forums, a month or two back when we were kind of starting a lot of the prep on this stuff and looking at, the sort of average, finish average, Ken Pom rating, all that over the last 10 years, which is something I do in every preview, and right now, Missouri is the worst team of the last 10 years in the SEC per the Ken Pom average rating. So, why that is, we're still hanging on to some Commanderson years. That hurts. Vandy still has some good years sort of at the tail end of those 10 or at the, I guess, beginning of those 10, however you want to look at it. But otherwise, like the history is showing you that Missouri is not going to be a good basketball team. But in fact, they have not been a good basketball team. And when they are a good basketball team, that looks more like an outlier, than anything else. Because while in those 10 years, they have had 3 trips to the NCAA tournament. Every other year, they've been bottom half of the league performers, and most of the time they've been in the bottom 4. So when you do that repeatedly, you get a reputation, and it doesn't matter if you go out and you sign the best classes, you still have to show up on the floor. You still have to win the games. And until you start winning the games consistently, there's going to be a lot of doubt. And I think that's kind of where we are right now is there's just a lot of doubt, including with us. Like, realistically, like I like this roster as well. Like, I think we both do. Like I'm picking them to go 9-9. You're picking them to go 10-8. I think you've got a few more teams ahead of them than I do, but it's just like, I think that they can be an NCAA tournament team, but they have to go guard. They have to rebound. They have to do the things that we talked about.
And I think there's, when I looked at it, I am always curious to know, how did the media perform and I way back in a time more than a decade ago, I was one of the people voting in this poll. So this is certainly sort of a reflective criticism of myself. Like, the media by and large here, they do a pretty good job of putting teams in the right tiers. Like, if you look at the last, since expansion, 80% of teams have finished within plus or minus 3 spots of where they were picked in the preseason. That's pretty good. Like, I looked at it today. Since expansion, teams that the media has picked to finish 6th or higher have won 11 of 12 regular season titles. They've claimed 94% of the double buys, and they've only fallen to play-in spots on Wednesday 3 times. So when you look at that media poll and you look at the top 6 or 7, you can feel pretty confident that the SEC champ is in that group, that the 4 double bye teams are in that group, and that most of those teams are probably going to finish in the upper half. They also do a pretty good job at segmenting the lower half, which is where Missouri is. Teams that finished 7th or lower have only jumped into the upper half 25% of the time. They've only earned a double bye 8.3% of the time. Missouri was one of those outliers a couple of years ago. And this is the kicker, and I think this is going to lead into my main point here. All but one slot, the number 11 slot in the preseason poll, have an average finish at the end of 10th or worse. So let's look at this. Missouri's picked 13th. 80% of the time, teams finish within plus or minus 3 spots. That's 10th. Teams picked in the bottom of the poll tend to have 10th as their ceiling. If you are objectively looking at the performance of the media and saying, how does this apply to what we can think of Missouri? 10th is kind of a rational ceiling to put on this group. You look at the average win total. What is that? 9-9 usually? Usually 9-9, 8-10. That's
somewhere in there,
yeah. So if you're sitting here and you're telling me that even if Missouri overachieves by 3 spots, overachieving probably gets them to 9-9. Historically speaking, I'm sure in the basketball offices they would tell us that that's grossly undervaluing their roster. This team is way better than people think. They're going to love this roster. They put it together. They're obviously biased towards that. But if you look at it, if this team goes 9-9 or 10-8, that's exceeding expectations this year, based on history, based on how teams have been picked, based on all the stats I just read off. And, so we're looking at a team that if you expect them to go 10-3, what is that? 18, 19 wins is kind of the floor, or is kind of the good baseline for what this roster should do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bubble team. That's a team that's fighting to get on the back end of the bubble. And, Missouri's got to earn more respect and demonstrate, as we were just talking about, that people rated them too low. They're better than that. But I don't think it's outlandish to say that if you say Missouri's going to go 19-12 and have to fight to get on the bubble, that's disrespectful. That's, given the history you just talked about, that's actually pretty good for where the program's been over the last decade. Only way that changes is if you go out and perform better. And that means rebounding and guarding.
So one of the things that I did want to talk about is, now that we do have, at least a baseline for, sort of what we can how we can sort of view all these, the schedule making for Missouri, and not just Missouri, but other teams. One of the things that I've switched up in the previews this year is I basically used, the average analytics models to try to get an idea of, how many quad 1, quad 2 opportunities were teams scheduling themselves, and how many were just given to them through the SEC scheduling. The SEC being more competitive has really played a role in giving everybody significant quad 1 opportunities in league. That's good, provided they hold, provided those rankings hold. That's a big part. But just to kind of, quickly go over this. So quad 1 is a home game for a team ranked 1 through 30, a neutral site game for a team ranked 1 through 50, and an away game for teams ranked 1 through 75. Quad 2 is a home game, teams ranked 31 through 75, neutral 51 through 100, and then away 76 through 135. So really, what you're trying to do in building a tournament resume is you're trying to get as many opportunities in these first and second quadrants in order to hopefully win several of those games. And if you can, then that essentially gives your tournament resume a boost. The more quad 1 wins, the more quad 2 wins you have, the better you're going to look, the more likely you are to be seeded. And then the more wins of those that you have, the higher your seed will be. So why that's important, we know that every year Missouri is going to play Kansas and Illinois. Very likely, the way that those two programs are going right now, those are going to be 2 quad 1 games. So again, neutral site 1-50. That's going to be Illinois. Illinois is almost always going to be a top 50 club. Home and away, doesn't really matter what Kansas is doing. They're really never likely to fall below 30 as long as Bill Self is going to be there. So you're looking at a quad 1 game regardless. They have one other quad 1 opportunity in the non-conference. That is against Memphis. That is the opening game of the season at Memphis. That's a tough game. That is 3 quad 1 opportunities. And then we get into the rest.
Good Lord.
And this is now, I've got this up on the screen. If you're following us on YouTube, you can see it yourselves. If you're subscribed to KenPom, you can go to the Missouri team page there and see this as well. But you don't see a whole lot of quad 3 games. So quad 3 at home. Yeah, quad 3 at home is 76 through 160 in order to get into quad 3. I see Cal. Everything else is quad 4.
9 quad 4.
Yeah, including once you leave Memphis, the entire month of November are home quad 4 games.
Oh boy.
Now, I understand that as a coach, that there is some
you're
benefit
paid to win basketball games.
Right. You want to win basketball games. You want to have time to kind of build up your roster. There's a lot of turnover in this roster. You're trying to kind of get that to coalesce. However, an entire month of quad 4, and then you come out of that with a quad 3 at the 1st of December, quad 1, quad 4, quad 4, quad 1, quad 4, and then you hit SEC play, and it's just like,
you're gonna hit a wall.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Watkins had his rant, so I'll try and
if you want to have your rant, you can go ahead. I feel like he and I went over this enough, but it's not giving yourself a whole lot of opportunities, and it's putting a lot on league play.
If you go 9-9 or 8-10 in the SEC, you can get into the SEC tournament. It has happened. It's happened a couple of times.
What, 2 years in a row?
Yeah. Arkansas did it. It's feasible. Those teams did not have non-conference schedules nearly as soft as what Missouri has here. Not even close. Just
for contrast, man. I'm gonna click on this Texas A&M. We're gonna look at them. That's a whole lot of double digits next to. Look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. So what this means, very simply, is Missouri's got to get to 10 wins in SEC play, or it's got to pick off. If it only wins 10, I mean, realistically, it's got to win 9 games. It has to sweep its quad 4. You can't take a quad 4 loss. You should beat Cal at home. So that's 10. If you go 0-3 against, your quad 1 opponents, there's nothing in the non-con for you. Nothing. You've got nothing out of your non-con. There are 12 quad 1 games right now in SEC play. Only one. I'm looking at it here. Maybe only 1 or 2 of those are at home. A lot of your quad 1 games in the SEC are also road games. Road teams in the SEC only win about 35% of the time. You are not teeing yourself up and you probably need 5 or 6 quad 1 wins to feel good about getting a bid. So you've got to basically go 500 in quad 1 games in the SEC just to get to 10 wins, get enough heft on your resume to even feel safe about making the field. And by the way, most of those games are on the road. 3 of them are at teams that are picked in the top. 2 of them are picked in the top 2 at Auburn and Tennessee. It's the non-con schedule here is not teed up to give them a lot if they don't get something from Memphis, Border War, or bragging rights. It's just not. Like, they 9-9 probably wouldn't do it if they went 10-3. They're going to need 10 wins probably to feel reasonably confident about that. And we just talked about a minute ago the rational ceiling based on historic play in SEC, based on preseason predictions, is what, 9 wins. They're going to be cutting it close. That's really where they are right now with this non-con schedule. If there's a situation where they may have to learn a hard lesson of going 500 in SEC play in a good SEC and getting left on the stoop if they don't do it. If they don't help themselves in non-con.
Mm-hmm.
And there won't be a lot that I can sit here on Selection Sunday and critique the committee about, because Missouri just put 9 quad 4 games on its non-con schedule. There's no world where you could say, I think the committee was a little harsh. A lot of eggs in the basket here on what they got to do in conference play. And the margins will be really, really thin. So they have
a 35% chance to win against Memphis, 36% against KU, and 39% against Illinois. If you take Ken Pom as his averages, they should win one of those games. Like that's generally how it works. They've got basically 1 1/3 chance to beat those 3 teams. That usually equates to getting 1. Still not the best odds, but yeah, like I think there's been a lot of discussion on this podcast already about the non-con schedule. We've had our issues with the non-con schedule, the last few years, and thinking that there was an awful lot of fluff. But last year's non-con schedule was better. And 2 years ago, they had Penn come in early. They had Wichita State, Kansas, UCF, Illinois. All of that was sort of lined up right in a row, so that that's not that bad. I really feel like
that trip to Auburn is going to be a splash of cold water.
Well, yeah, and I've been doing a lot of these schedules, and I just I don't know if there's anybody else who has 9 quad 4 games in their non-con. I've got Georgia here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Georgia has 8.
Yeah.
They do have 1 true road game, 3 neutral.
That's the other thing that kills me here is Mizzou's going to go between. It will not have a true road game between November 5 and January 4. It will not leave the state for 2 months. And then it's got to go to one of the hardest places to play in the conference. It's a team that's picked second. Cool.
It's top 5 preseason Ken Pom team. Most bet the AP poll come out. Bet they're going to be a top 10 team. I've got a little more skepticism about Auburn, even though I think I've got them picked second.
Even if you have skepticism, that's not setting yourself up for success.
But it's Auburn, and they're really freaking hard to beat at home.
And they've smashed you at home. They've smashed Missouri at home.
Even when Auburn hasn't been good, they're still really hard to beat at home. And by not being good, that's a relative term because they've been better than Missouri. I'm more talking about 3-4 years ago.
They smashed Missouri when they finished 9th in the conference. It's been a house of horrors for Missouri to go there. And that's including when there haven't been people in the building. It's been bad. So
yeah.
I get it. I get what, you want to build continuity. You're paid to win games as a coach. Mizzou Arena, the best indicator of what's going to put people in the seats is a winning product. So I get it. But I talked to Rocco Miller about this too. The calculus here is if we schedule a lot of quad 4 games and we smash people by 30 or 40, it's going to juice our net rating. Well, Missouri the last 2 years has been absolutely leaky as an oil can in garbage time. So if you don't beat somebody by 25 or 30 in these games, they're worth absolutely nothing to you. They don't help your net rating at all. They drag on your SOS. And it just puts more pressure on you come conference play. When, again, history says the reasonable ceiling to set right now, based on available evidence, is 9-9 or 10-8. It's incredibly, incredibly hard to thread that needle. And it didn't have to be. They could have 3 of these quad 4 games could have been quad 3 games against decent mid-major teams, and they'd have been fine. So that's the thing. We're talking about a lot now, and they got to play 31 games, but I'm just preparing people for the fact that we might be here in February talking about how Missouri's 500 in the SEC, and on the outside looking in, and we'll be like, well, they didn't play anybody in non-con.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why Buzz Williams, that Texas A&M schedule you showed? Buzz only started scheduling those games after the NCAA selection committee left Texas A&M out on the stoop after a pretty good SEC year.
Not just left them on the stoop, but the next year, Texas A&M went 15-3 in the SEC, and they got a 7 seed. Yeah, and it was almost entirely because their non-conference schedule was trash.
The committee is telling you a very clear message: schedule people, schedule live, breathing bodies. Because if you don't smash them, they're gonna hammer you inside the selection, inside the conference room. That's what I see when I see the non-conference schedule. I see a schedule that lives dangerously for a team that's right now, unless it just utterly annihilates preseason expectations, wins 11, 12, 13 SEC games.
Hey, I'm for that.
I mean, we're all for that, but history again suggests that that's rare. The non-con schedule could be a real hindrance to them. So that we've beaten this horse now on 2 podcasts. I just think it's pretty obvious what could be a problem come late February. It didn't have to be.
Yeah. Well, that's all that I had. You have any updates you want to get to before we get out of here?
Just on the recruiting front, looks like Davion Hannah is going to be doing another circuit ride unofficially with folks. Don't know when that circle back to Mizzou will be. It's a short trip from Link Academy in Branson to Columbia, but he's tracking towards an early November signing day kind of deadline. Nicholas Randall took a visit to San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. That's the University of San Francisco. First OV he's taken since going to Mizzou in June. Not much has changed there. Missouri would take him. If he ever decided that he wanted to commit. They're not holding a spot, but they'd take him if he decided that he wanted to come. So we're sort of in a holding pattern in the 25 class. It's been a busy September and October with the 26s. I think they've hosted JJ Andrews, Sheik Pearson, teammates with Brad Beal Elite. That was, I think, September 14. They brought in Kiner Espria, the number 1 post prospect, kind of a developmental prospect too, for the 26 class. A week later, they've had on October 6th, they had a wing out of upstate New York come in for an official visit, and then this past weekend, Amari Wooten, a borderline top 100 guy, and then this past weekend, looks like they brought in Ethan Taylor, a big man out of Shawnee Mission Northwest on the JoCo side of the KC border, and he's a top 50 kind of kid. So they're really kind of, I think, laying in some groundwork and some relationship building in 26. People know that Scotty Atkinson has been down a couple of times. Chase Branham's been down a couple of times, and Jimmy McKinney Jr. All three of those guys are 27 kids. They've all been down for unofficial visits. The real thing to watch is the timelines for Hannah and Randall. And then in 26, the storyline to pay attention to is they've got a lot of bigs that they're looking at and evaluating. And that could be a really, really good class if they want to supplement the front line depth that they've got. But that's all happening on the recruiting front. Do you want me to rant some more about the schedule and how I wish there were like 3 quad 3 games on there?
I feel like we've hit that square in the head. So maybe we'll pipe this into the Mizzou Arena loudspeakers over practice, and can have an effect going into next year.
Yeah.
I can't change what it is now. It's too late. Contracts are signed. Schedule set. It's going to be a long November. They should win all those games. Hopefully they do.
Maybe the freshmen get to play a lot. Maybe let's be out there. Maybe the freshmen get to play a lot. You know,
there could be that would be a start. Let's see. So it's October 15th. This actually we're recording earlier because my wedding anniversary is tomorrow night, and we've got plans tomorrow night and Thursday night that will preclude me from recording a podcast. So it is possible that if you're just listening to this on the podcast feed, that you're not getting this until maybe Thursday or Friday. If you're a Rock M Plus subscriber, you can always check out what is on the video here, which will go live for everybody else here soon. So then I think we'll be back. We're going to take next week off, the 22nd. That week, and then the following week is the week of Halloween, so we'll probably have to go before Halloween. Then we'll be previewing the season basically, because the very next week is basketball, and then we'll be going more regularly.
Yeah, weekly again.
It's going to be hard because the schedule in the non-con is always a little rocky as far as when they actually play the game. So we'll figure out what the schedule is, and we'll keep everybody up to date. And I'm excited for basketball, regardless of whether or not they have a truckload of quad 4 games. I'm excited to watch Mizzou basketball. College basketball season looks like it's going to be a fun one. That's it. We're going to get out of here. Make sure that you're subscribed, right? Podcast feed, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play. If that's still alive. Spotify. We're on Spotify. Before the box score is rolling. Majority Rules is rolling. Rock M Reacts is rolling. Look at all these podcasts. Chad, the Mo Show's coming back soon.
So many
podcasts. It's a lot of podcasts. You can do the Twitter thing. Give Matt a follow at Matt J. Harris 85. You can follow me at Sam T. Snelling. Follow the flagship at Rock M Nation. We will always point you in the right direction, including dunking on weird Auburn fans. And go Tigers. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.